I must thank you guys for joining. I know this is still at the prime of your day. And of course, this being our very first webinar in a series of many that we have planned for you. I'm really happy to anchor the webinar for today. Partnering with Resource Associates. And Resource Associates, as you have been told, has a long history of great stuff, especially in the organizational development space, powering people development. And I think this is really one area that, we have partnered with them to engage and also really drive HR transformation across the board. So my name is Nicholas. I am currently the founder and managing partner at Pan-African Talent Hub. That is a very new kid on the block, but really behind the brand is the person who will be moderating this session with you today. I'm also joined this Oscar and Christine Orono. So we want to really keep this as engaging as possible. So feel free to engage on the chat. We will have Q&As. We would also like to hear from you on your experience, especially on this topical area. Today we'll be talking about everything technology in HR and really, going deeper into what does this mean for us as organizations and also as businesses in terms of technical advancements within human resources and how we are, that is powering, the next generation or really moving us to the next level. When you think about all the digital platforms that we are seeing to date, all the evolution into different spaces we are seeing to date, what are new tools and technologies. So this will be part of our conversations today. We will appreciate that this is quite a broad topical area, so we may not cover everything in 1 hour. However, we will try and focus more our conversation around automation and AI, data-driven decision-making, remote work solutions, employee self-service portals, and learning and development platforms. So those are 5 key areas we want to try and center the conversation around. And of course, many others, we'll be very much willing to hear from you on what your experiences have been in your own spaces and, what's going on around us. So I think without much further ado, I will now get on to the conversation with our panelists. One thing that we will also realize, I think for most of us who are already more advanced in the technology space than others, is that there are a couple of benefits we find, especially when you think about streamlining your processes, improving your efficiencies, and of course, employee experience. So I think we are all about, how do we keep engagement? How do we make work easier? How do we remove administrative burden from our teams? How do we become more laser focused on our core as HR teams and really supporting the business? So really looking forward to the conversation. And let me start with Oscar. I think what you'll do is just quickly give us a quick overview of what you do at Seamless HR. But needless to say, I think if you haven't known yet, Seamless HR has recently featured as one of the fastest growing companies in Africa and top 25 in Financial Times. So I think there's a great sense of celebration for this team at Seamless HR, and Oscar will tell us more about it. And maybe just to start us off, Oscar, looking at the experience you guys have seen, and especially within companies in Africa, some of them are really just starting to adopt some of these technologies and tools. So if you think about automation and AI, how can these departments or HR departments, effectively integrate some of these tools into their processes without, losing the human touch? And you can maybe just speak a bit about that.
Okay. First of all, thank you very much for the opportunity. Just to confirm, you can hear me?
Yes, perfectly well.
Super. So first of all, thank you for that introduction. quite doing a lot of things here at Seamless HR. So just a brief background about Seamless is that we are Africa's first company that is able to do end-to-end HR and payroll. So we're able to automate the entire employee journey from recruitment all the way to exit on a single database. So you'll be able to recruit somebody on the platform, take them through onboarding, take them through payroll management, disciplinary time and attendance, the whole thing until he exits the organization. But that's just software. And software is supposed to make it easier for HR people like Christine to actually be able to actually run their businesses. So AI does not change basically how HR people interact with the employees on a day-to-day basis. It just makes it better. So it actually starts by removing the repetitive, mundane tasks that HR people have been bombarded with over all those years. So HR as a profession should focus on strategy, should focus on culture, should focus on employee welfare. But for a long time, HR people have been bombarded with a lot of what I'd call clerical work. So with the solutions that we have at Seamless HR, we are able to actually remove that. So for example, we on the platform, you have an employee self-service portal. So think about somebody joining the organization 10 years ago. He was single, he didn't have a wife, he didn't have kids. And every time he advances in education, he has to bring a certificate to the HR for it to be uploaded in a file somewhere. So with the employee self-service, we are now able to push all that thing back to the employee so that the employee at the comfort of his desk, at home, wherever he is, he can actually go to the platform and actually upload this thing for them. So there's a lot of time saved as well. And there's also a lot of focus now pushed to HR to now actually focus on what they should actually be doing, which is culture and employee welfare. Thank you.
Yeah, great. I mean, speaking about the employee self-service portals, you realize some companies or some places people tend to struggle a bit in terms of adoption. And I don't know what you have seen work or not working in terms of best practice. Say, I'm a startup, but I'm trying to get more efficient, and we're growing really fast across the region. But then this is an option for us to really be more efficient. But then we realized that a couple of our employees are still relying, heavily on HR, and sort of not really trusting the system so much, but they feel more confident, relating with an Oscar or a Christine. So how do we get them to get fully bought into this new process?
Okay. First of all, the solution that you pick as an organization really matters. I'd give you, and that's why, as you mentioned about Seamless being a fast-growing company, I'd give you what we used to do back in the day, whereby when we were making systems, probably they were made for finance people, they were made for accountants, they were made for IT people. Now, Seamless HR is made for the HR professional, okay? So one of the aspects that you do when you're creating software, make it as easy as you can actually make it, so that when it comes to the employee, it is not laborious, they are actually easy to adapt it. And I like giving the example of Facebook. No one ever taught you how to use Facebook. You just went in, the colors, the fonts were made it so easy that you immediately searched for someone you went to high school with, immediately asked for a connection, and immediately messaged him and you started talking. And that's how software should actually be made. So even here at Seamless HR, we made a software so easy to use such that it's an easy adoption. So at the end of the day, if someone is applying for leave, if someone is doing their performance management, even if it's HR actually taking people through a recruitment process, it has been so easy so that it is easy to adapt and easy to use.
Yeah, great. No, thanks for that. Yeah, I think what I get is really just simplify it as much as possible.
Yes.
Sometimes really just communicate. And of course, what I've also seen work from experience is really having leaders adopt this and lead from the front with their teams. Just to show that it's a proof of concept and this is really working. So thanks for that. Moving more into now, and maybe I'll sort of bring Christine on from a corporate perspective. When it comes to making decisions leveraging data, research has been showing of lately that 37% of business leaders, I think this is from Gartner, do not trust data analysis coming from HR people. So 37%, they don't have confidence, business leaders don't have confidence in what we are showing them in terms of our data analysis. So could this be a question of lack of knowledge? Could it be a question of accuracy of what we're presenting? Would it be a competency issue? How can we get better at being more data driven and using this for decision making, especially within our businesses? Christine, if you could come in.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon to everybody. And thank you for that question, Nicholas. I think, that is an experience I've come across live every single day around, the quality of data that us human capital, human resources professionals provide to our leaders for decision making. I think, first of all, I think it has to do with how is that data captured? Sometimes we have challenges with just, the source of the information, because they always say that garbage in, garbage out. So Oscar could sell us a great process, a great system, but the quality of the data that is put in. So even he's talking about self-service, for example. A lot of the information needs to be captured by the employees themselves sometimes. So if it's about, let me take an example of leave, and which is an example of something that we're currently grappling with is in our organization. And you find most of that information needs to be captured by the employee themselves, and the people managers or the line managers have a role to play. Maybe it is in approving those transactions in the system. And so if I go into the system as a HR practitioner to pull out the information from the system, sometimes you find people have not been capturing the information. There are errors in capturing even the type of leave, for example, because we have leaves in different categories. So you've got leave for, let's say it's annual leave, or it's study leave, or it's compassionate leave. And, sometimes employees are not well trained enough to be able to capture the leave category correctly. So what you find is that when you're pulling out a report to share with leaders around analytics, say around that aspect of leave, then you'll find you already have an error. You already have challenges with showing that you have such a huge leave liability, but we see people going on leave all the time, or there's abuse in the system. So I think the issue is one, how we train up our employees, our colleagues, to capture their data correctly on the system. And leave is one of those that I've seen has sometimes has challenges, or there's a lag. I went on leave 2 months ago and I haven't captured it. So now I'm showing a leave position that is not correct. So of course, the leaders, when you show them that you have a leave liability that is bloated, they'll have challenges with that data, and they'll throw you out of the meeting room with it. So I think for me, one of them is how you train, how you get people to adopt the system properly, so that it can be used for the right purposes. I mean, we have lots of great data that these HR systems can give us, but a lot of times the gaps that we have with the line manager also in the way they input information. So for example, some of the leading edge talent management systems require a line manager to go in there and put in some certain information about the employee, whether it's talent ratings or certain things about the employee. And you just find that sometimes the leaders themselves also have capacity and capability challenges in doing the right thing on the system. So then you find that the output you get from the system then will have a challenge. The data is not correct or is not updated regularly. So there's quite a lot in there around capacity building our people, how you land your system. I have had the privilege of landing a HR information system before, and how you land it and how you demonstrate to employees and people managers the value of the system and what it can do for them if they do the right thing, I think is something that we need to do better. Change management around landing these solutions. They sound so good, but if you don't land them properly, then you're going to have challenges with getting the value out of these processes and systems. So let me pause it there, but those are some of the key things I have seen as key challenges in as HR people, you have turned out into marketers sometimes. Why is this a good system for us to use? What value will it give to us if we use it correctly? That's something that I find that we struggle as HR people, is really landing the value add to the business leader, why this system is, why this collecting this data is important to you and to us as a HR function.
Yeah. I think you're very spot on. You're very, very spot on in us selling the value of the data and selling the why we need it. And so that, the business can actually read with us on the same page. Because sometimes we just do it because we think it's good, then, the other guys, the stakeholders are reading on a different page. And then most of this, you will realize, quite heavy on investment, especially with the ERP and the implementation. So if we don't get the change management right, then clearly it may not serve the purpose. So thanks for that. Guys, feel free to chip in. Any questions on the chat? Becky, just stay tuned for any comments or any questions coming in the chat. But still on data and analytics. Now, usually there are, I don't know if you've also come across this, there could be potential ethical considerations or challenges when dealing with data and analytics when it comes to decision making. What are some of these potential ethical considerations or challenges we may need to be aware of, even as we, sort of crunch these numbers, this data, and within our spaces?
Yeah, that's a very, very important question there, Nicholas, because a lot of things are currently emerging around that space, around the ethical considerations. And one of them, I think, because you see, when you're using data, it's a powerful tool in HR. But, there are some ethical concerns that people raise. One is things like data privacy, for example, you can gather a lot of information about people, their personal information, their, performance, all these things. But we need to ensure that, it's secure, and how you utilize that information outside of the HR department is also very important. How are you going to use that information? Do you get consent, say, from colleagues about using the information that you've collected? Sometimes we gather information that could sometimes be typically misused elsewhere. So, for example, there was a time I've come across situations where we launched a new information system, and the employees were hesitant to put things in like their personal residence. And when you go around and ask people, why are you not willing to put this in? And it's because they have no problem with HR seeing it, but they have a problem with the line manager seeing it, for example, and so they have hesitance with who else is seeing this information. How confidential is this information when I give it to the company or when I put it in the system? Because this is information that someone can actually put in the system, dependents' names, where they work, next of kin, and all these things. And line managers can sometimes, if you find a line manager who's not exactly working in integrity, then there'll be a challenge with how that information is used. I also see that there are potentials around discrimination and bias sometimes that come up. So, for example, some algorithms we use in our data analytics can have inherent biases, if we don't watch out for them. So, for example, a lot of systems, for instance, today can you have algorithms in there around recruitment, promotion, decisions that we make in HR. So sometimes if they're not well set up, some of these systems are coming from the West, for example. Are they building in some form of discrimination as we're using this system, isn't it? So that then issues of transparency and fairness start to come up, and employees need to understand why we collect data about them, what we use it for, and give them assurance that we don't take it outside the organization. We're not using it for surveillance, for example. I've come across managers who want to monitor their employees who are working remotely. So how we, what is the use of that, So they want to get a report, for example, on logins, for example. What time did people log in? Those kind of things can, why are we monitoring those things? So sometimes employees can feel like they are being watched, that there's an ulterior motive with some of these systems that we're putting in place. So I've come across those kind of challenges, and they're currently increasing. When you're asking people to update certain things in their system. So you need to have clear policies, obviously, very clear why you collecting this information. Make sure you have consent from people when you're collecting the data. We've seen these data privacy acts that are coming up, and they can catch up with organizations if we're not careful with how we're utilizing the data in the organization. And it could be innocently used within the organization. But again, when we are presenting this information to others outside of HR, how do we present it? How do we also sometimes hide the identity of people, even when we are making a point around certain aspects of people practices that we're trying to highlight in organizations? So I think we have got to be increasingly more careful around how we use this analytics, so that we are fair to the individuals. And we're also now following the laws of the land, that we don't breach some of these data privacy acts that we're beginning to see taking root in our country and beyond.
Yeah. Very, very, very true. I think what we are beginning to see is an increased level of awareness, and on the part of our employees as well, on their rights for what they share. So that data becomes very, very sensitive. And of course, with the Data Commission as well, trying to rein in the misuse of data. I think something that we need to really pay close attention to. And of course, now speaking on remote work solutions, and maybe I'll give you a break to take some water. Oscar, when you think about remote work solutions, and we're coming in an era where companies are already starting to balance between on-site and working from home. Then there's the big elephant in the room around engagement, employee engagement, and well-being. How do you sustain that? And how would you leverage technology to ensure that you achieve optimum engagement, whether your teams are working on site? And this is really for remote working teams, especially if you have teams spread all over. How do you ensure that level of engagement and well-being? As a line manager, for instance, you're on mute.
Sorry for that. You talk about two things, and engagement and well-being. So let me start with well-being. The fact that somebody is working remotely doesn't mean they are working for 24 hours. And Christine, as a HR professional, will be a witness. So what has been happening is that managers who are not HR centered as much would expect that since Oscar is working from home, he should be available every single time. And what that happens is that you end up killing basically even a work culture as well. Because now somebody will say, at the end of the day, just because I didn't come to the office, my work still remains 9 to 5. So we have to be careful as well as line managers to ensure that when somebody is working remotely, their well-being is also being taken care of, so that you also avoid burnouts. You actually avoid even people actually quitting, because sometimes the work becomes a lot. Because somebody assumes just because you're at home, you're available, you have internet, you should actually do that job. You also have another part of your life that you need to attend to. But there's also that other part you talked about, the engagement. So there are tools basically now that are at our own disposal that you can actually use to ensure that people even at home are actually working. There are project management tools. There is also instant messaging, so that sometimes when you want to reach out to somebody, you can actually be able to reach them. At the end of the day, we look at basically the task that you're given. Will you be able to actually accomplish it, and as well as your accessibility. So I look at engagement in terms of ensuring that the tasks that are given to employees can actually be still attained, and this employee is still reachable. And at the end of the day, you also have to ensure that that cohesion that you have between members of your staff is not lost. So you also have to figure out how are you going to be ensuring that these employees still relate to each other, they're still be able to talk to each other, and at the end of the day, the work has to be done.
Yeah. But I see people do different things depending on what works with the situation. Some people like having, this online check-ins or online parties or things like that, just to check on people, and they really make them as creative as possible, so that you make sure that everybody's participating. Everyone has their camera on. So no one is behind cameras, and then you are able to read the body language. But it really takes it has to be very deliberate on the part of the manager to take this effort, because some of them, just sure that, so long as we have all the teams, we can collaborate. I don't care what else is happening in your life. Yeah. So I think those are some of the challenges we have, just to take note of. I want to just read a couple of comments coming on the chat as well. Someone is saying change is a major elephant in the room. How we sell, doing punitive ways for staff for adoption. So this change there, we're just emphasizing that. And then John Mwanza is asking, how do you maneuver in an environment where workers are involved in manual work and they have very little access to computers or even smartphones? How do you maneuver? So I think you probably would have people working in the factory or some people in the field, and these people rarely access laptops or smartphones. Yes, Oscar.
Okay, cool. And I want to give you a practical example. As we deploy solutions across manufacturing sectors, agricultural sector as well. At the end of the day, as Christine tells you, she doesn't want to go to the business and say, this is a huge leave liability that I'm already carrying. So at the end of the day, you also have to ensure everyone comes into the system and you are able to actually be able to capture the leave applications and all those things. So there are tools that you can do about it. If someone doesn't have a smartphone, does he have access to SMS? Sometimes you can incorporate WhatsApp, SMS to even leave applications as well. So technology has gone very, very, there's been a huge advancement in that. Even that leave application, you don't have to go to a laptop to actually do it. You can actually go to SMSs, you can actually go to your mobile device, even an USSD code to actually do the application. Because at the end of the day, a leave application is just when do you want to go on leave and for how many days. Okay, and the system is intelligent enough to jump Saturdays and Sundays if you guys don't work on Saturdays and Sundays. Or even have a situation in a factory floor, there is a supervisor who will actually be able to do what you call impersonification, apply for leave on behalf of their members of staff. The idea here is to ensure that each and every member of staff has to complete that application, and somehow it's in the system, so that you make now Christine's work easier. When that staff is exiting the organization, it's very clear in terms of the leave liability, and you're not reporting erroneous figures back to management.
Christine, you wanted to chip in?
Yeah, I think there are also other ways that I've seen in some setups where they have things like biometric access systems for such cadres of workers, which can capture information on being present and being absent. Of course, if you're not there, then it will automatically clock that. But I've also seen, even in our environments, there are people who may not have access to machines, but what we have is maybe central pods where people can log in those things. But it will require you to upskill some of those workers on this basic ways, basic functionalities, and how they can utilize the technology, because they also need to grow. Sometimes we think that the manual workers can't do these things, but many of them are on M-Pesa. They have most of them have a phone. It might not be a smartphone, but at least if you have some regular ways of upskilling this cadre of workers, they can catch up, and you can have shared machines where people can do some basic HR activities on, so that, because most organizations are currently looking at eliminating paper. That's the reality. Even when we have this climate change conversation, that paperless discussion is coming up more and more. People are also going to start eliminating physical files in their workplaces. So even those workers you can have resources in the organization where those people can be supported to be able to upload, say, their their documents into a system. Most of these people, they're also having to file tax returns. So they do have a basic, some of them are currently getting to that level where they can do some basic functions. So that's what I wanted to add in. Many of them we cannot leave them behind. Even in our environments, I work in a bank, we do try to bring those people up to speed on what they can learn these functionalities and be able to do it for themselves. Thanks, Nick.
Right, yeah. No, thanks. What I've also seen with some companies within manufacturing is they would have sort of a centralized machine or computer. So there's a day when these people come on site and then they have to do all those things they need to do, apply for leave and, just put in their details and just catch up on what's happening. So I think, we can always find a way around it, which works in both ways. So thanks for that. And of course, yeah, so we are moving into a green economy. So everything now is sustainability, in all areas, climate financing. So we have to pay attention to how much we are able to get rid of all those paper and manual tasks, despite the fact that we work in highly, operational environments, which is highly manual involved. Now, I see only one chart here. Just encourage us to keep on writing, keep on commenting. If you have any questions on the chat, let's keep the conversation going. Now, still on the issue of HR technology, I'll keep this very open. There's always the potential risk of over relying on HR technology, at the expense of the employees' needs and preferences. And sometimes, it's a catch-22. We really have to be efficient. We have to streamline the processes, but there's always that potential risk that if we over-rely on this tech-enabled environment, we may always lose sight of what's going on the side of the employee. I don't know, from your own perspective, Oscar, Christine, what have you seen as a potential risk, and how do we manage or balance some of these risks?
Maybe let me mention one. I think it's very possible that you can digitize all your HR and lose the human touch. I think it is possible that it can happen, that you've automated everything from recruitment to performance reviews to leave, and create a very cold and impersonal experience for your employees. And of course, that's not where we want to end up. The technology is supposed to come in to free up the HR resource to create more time for the more strategic elements of HR, give us more time to sit to do coaching and upskilling of people and things like that. So that's one risk I see, where you can go overboard with these things and create a very cold employee experience for your people, where everything you just tell them, go to the system. Of course, initially, I've done some change management for HR systems, and when you are telling everybody, just make sure you put everything in the system. When they come to you for a small thing, you say, no, go to the system. But I think we have to be able to also focus on the human touch. Whilst technology can streamline for us the processes, the human interaction remains vital for us. So how do we continue to have regular check-ins, meetings with people, have face-to-face communication? Don't let can we say, these virtual communication tools we have adapted, they can actually now overtake the need for communication and connection, building human connection with people. It's very easy for that to happen. So in our world, for example, we say, yes, we're on a hybrid working format. Yes, most of our meetings are virtual, but at least a couple of times in a month, how do people come together and have that human touch, that connection? Because there's something it does to our culture. Culture cannot be built when we're seated in our homes virtually. Unfortunately, it cannot happen because, culture is propagated through interactions, through the storytelling, through the conversations. And so how do you make sure you continue to create that so that you don't have disengagement? During the height of COVID pandemic, I know people went into the almost 100% virtual, and you could feel and sense that there was something that we were missing. Yeah. Let me talk about even onboarding new employees. You cannot do it 100% virtually. There's an element of it where the early days of a new employee, they need to come in physically for that induction, for that orientation, even before you send them off to work remotely. There's got to be that element where we balance the cold virtual space with a face-to-face interaction. And I think many organizations are in that stage where we're trying to balance the two. Yes, we've allowed people to go virtual, hybrid, whatever it is, but there's that need for us to regularly connect. And you'll find that even when people come into the office for those connect sessions, there's something it does even around ideation, strategy. There's still, in fact, the future is in human touch. That's what I still believe. A big part of organization culture has to be built through human touch. I'm a strong believer in it. Whilst I do enjoy working remotely in my house many times because I see the high productivity actually when I work from home. That's the truth. I eliminate the commute. I eliminate the distractions. But there's those moments when I come to the office and connect with people and we have meetings and we're ideating on something, brainstorming on something. There's some magic in it that we can't miss out. So that would be my contribution on that question.
Okay. If I just to add on what Christine is saying, and the idea of just, as she was saying, just go to the system. To many employees, system just scares us. Okay. So why does HR keep telling us to go to the system? What is the system collecting? So a lot of time also these trainings to employees just for them to understand what is the organization's need for you to actually go to the system. So there's something bigger at play here. So that training, that communication, basically just going back to employees and just telling them that there's nothing mysterious about the system. It's just basically how we can improve our processes. That really goes a long way in actually helping with employees.
Yeah, no, very, very well put. Yeah, and Christine, you're spot on, especially around that human touch. Because sometimes you wonder, there's always a difference when you meet people face to face or in person than when you talk to them remotely. It's very different, and it's a whole magic around it. So I think you put it so well. I see Caroline.
Sorry, Nick, can I add something brief?
Yes.
Quick one. Something came to mind. It was a real life example of an experience I have gone through. We were hiring for a role, and there's some candidate who was very good virtually. On the virtual space, they came out so energized, so strong, so everybody thought this is the candidate. But then there was a follow-up interview that we had to do, but now face to face with this candidate. Between their virtual interview and the face to face, the individual was so low key, no energy, couldn't express themselves. So there's a way in which people can act behind a screen. That's what I've seen. And actually, one of the risks I'm seeing, and for those HR practitioners as well on this call, you watch out for this, especially on virtual interviews, that people can actually now use ChatGPT and all that to get responses for interviews. And it's very possible, by the way, even to have somebody tutoring them on the side. I don't know, but I that experience taught me something, that there's still a place for face-to-face where we're able to see the entire 360 communication of a person, voice, body language, everything coming through that helps you to make the right hiring decision. I thought I'd just throw that in there.
Yeah. You bring a very important dimension there, especially with virtual interviews. So yeah, I think we've seen this many times, especially with prompting. The people who get prompted, by the virtual tutors. On what to say, how to smile, how to even position themselves so they look very, very smart. And so yeah. So that's one stuck challenge there. And thanks for highlighting that. Guys on the call, please share your experiences as well. Really curious to hear what you guys are going through in your organizations. Anything that is sticking out on this topical area around, balancing virtual and in-person, please just share it here. I see Caro Auma's mentioning here that, you make a very important point that risk of directing employees to the system, everyone to the system, it must be supported with human engagement to help translate the info, the data, the questions, get different perspectives and insights. Martha Kageha also says, for me, we need to add our skills as technology advances so that we cannot see technology overtake our work. So basically, let's get smarter than technology. Wanjiru Andrew Wambura, you say the pandemic lost many new staff having to be onboarded virtually, and even when they would come to the office, I did not find the others. They never caught up with the organization culture or caught up with their own culture, as none was communicated. So most of these are the employees who have been pushed to go to the system being their default. Thank you, Christine, for putting it so well. So clearly we are seeing here a big mismatch with the going to the system, and especially with the onboarding, where you really want to get people quickly up to speed, but then how are they going to experience your culture if they have not really experienced people in person? So that's quite enlightening there. Great. Guys, keep them coming. I think we are getting to probably about 10 minutes to go. We want to get in as many questions as possible. Lilian Karungwa, my friend from Uganda, I think you're saying here that not done much of virtual recruitment. I feel like as recruiters, we need a personal touch to see if the employee can actually make a good fit for the organization, right from the gate to the interview room. Yeah, great. Very important point. Someone wants to say something? Please just unmute or raise your hand, and then we'll be able to see you.
And oh my goodness, there's a stark difference.
Great. Now, still moving on, there is also the aspect of learning and development platforms. And we are seeing now an increase in most organizations adopting e-learning or digital learning solutions so that they are able to democratize learning, what we sometimes call learning in the flow of work, where you're able to access the content you need and sort of align this to your development plan, and also assign your teams the different courses that you want them to take. But then, of course, the only question is, how do we ensure that we leverage technology and ensure that the learning that we are, sort of supporting our teams to utilize is aligned to the business priorities and the organizational strategies. So that it's not just learning for the sake of learning, but how do we leverage technology in such a way that this learning definitely aligns to what the business is looking to, and it's really translating to real business outcomes. So I don't know if you guys, any of you, Oscar, Christine, has experience on this space and really how to get the best out of these digital learning solutions to really speak to what the organization is looking to achieve.
Yeah, maybe I could start off. And this is an area I think many organizations would are still learning on. One of the things I've seen is that nowadays there's so much learning available. I mean, the learning platforms, I think we have an overload of them. That's the truth. If you got Udemy, most organizations have their own learning management systems. There's YouTube as well. There's so much learning. But I think one of the things that we need to continue to make sure we align well is those needs, the needs assessment at the basic level. How are those needs assessed, and are they data driven? I mean, you talked about data earlier. Are they data driven? Because again, sometimes the temptation is to push as much learning as possible. Push it. But taking a step back to actually do a very comprehensive needs analysis. I mean, now with the tools that we have, it should be easy for us to utilize, whether it's your LMS or your LXPs. They offer good skill gap analysis tools that can help people identify, the gaps that people have, and therefore then align the learnings to actually bridge the specific gaps that you want to address. I think that's something that I don't see a lot of, because it's very easy to push. There's all these Udemy learning paths and all that. We've done that sometimes, and it doesn't work effectively, because if the individual doesn't see the why, like you said earlier, Nick, why must I do this learning? How is it connected to me and also the organization? I see that as a step that sometimes can easily miss out. How do you leverage the data through performance reviews? Now that's where data can speak loudly. You have performance reviews, skill gaps coming out of those performance reviews. How do you utilize that? You've got a lot of these feedbacks we get, customer feedback. Most organizations do good customer experience surveys. So there's a lot of data, but how are we leveraging this data to actually then narrow down to the needs, to the actual, that this learning will actually plug this need that we have identified through all these platforms. Yeah. That's something that I'm seeing that we need to get more smarter at, because it's very easy to push learning, and there's a lot of good content out there. feel-good content, but how is this content really driving performance? Because at the end of the day, all organizations here exist to deliver something, yeah? There's an outcome, yeah? There's an outcome the organization is trying to drive, performance at a certain level. So how is all this learning being linked to that? So I think as HR people, we need to get smarter in using the data that we have derived from all these platforms to be able to tell the story clearly to leadership as to why we necessarily need to push a particular level of learning. I think there's very good, you know, now in this hyper-personalized world, which is very exciting, you can personalize learning paths very well nowadays, isn't it? So well. There are all these opportunities for you to then push learning that is linked to specific skill gaps or learning needs that have been picked up from all these other tools that we have in the systems. So it's very easy for you to adapt those learnings, yeah. And that's the power we have now in the human resource function, personalized learning that is linked to somebody's career path. They want to go this direction. So how do you then push content that is relevant to that? Nowadays, you don't have to go to a whole day's course. You can do micro learning, you know, bite-sized chunks. It's a very exciting world, the learning space, but it has to be very well organized for you to ensure that you get to the objectives that you have. I mean, even the nature of content today, you can create very exciting content. You can use cartoons, you can do anything. You can create content that is exciting enough. You know, people are tired of the traditional approaches of a teacher standing in front of them. How do you create more exciting? I mean, our Gen Zs and Gen Ys, they want you to add some real color to the training. Even if you're doing the training virtually, how do you make it more exciting? You know, using the breakout room. I mean, I think the space is out there for us to utilize. But I go back to what is the need? How do you address that need? Because even all these guys, this younger generation want to see what is in it for me. Yeah. Why must I attend that training? Yeah. How do we create that narrative? That's why sometimes to some extent, let me be honest with you, Nick, I've seen like our roles in HR morphing into more marketing because you have to position, you have to deliver value. Yeah. So you've got to be able to make that connection for people. Yeah. So it's not just, yes, I have a nice learning system here. How are you selling it to the people? Yeah. What is the value add to them? How will it change their life? You have to be able to pitch those messages. So sometimes I find like in HR, I've kind of moved this way of sales and marketing, where you've got to position what is it we're trying to do? How does this help you and the company at the same time? Let me allow Oscar to add in.
Thanks, Christian. Nothing much, not more to add, but now from a system point of view, and that's the beauty of using an end-to-end HR system, because an end-to-end HR system is a system that recruited that particular employee, took him through onboarding, and realized that there's some gaps and there's some competencies missing in relation to that employee. So a good system should tell you how do you address these particular competencies, and actually how do you allocate training to this particular employee. Then when you take that employee through performance management and you see that you can even do a competency assessment and saying, is actually Oscar in the right job? So what is he lacking? Then you're able to actually allocate training to him. That way, and that's what Christine is saying, that at the end of the day, that particular Gen Z will ask you, how did you actually come up and say that I need skills in presentation? Because if you look at back in the day, we are all bundled in one room and say, guys, the company wants you to learn about X. But a guy goes like, I'm already knowledgeable in this thing. I'm actually more knowledgeable than the tutor you actually brought into the room. So data should actually tell you what gaps are there existing in that particular workplace. So for you to actually allocate the best training to these particular employees. Then also modes of learning have changed. We want something more interesting. We don't want just to sit in a room and being just reciting the same things. So many things are out there, so many tools are out there to ensure at the end of the day, it becomes a very, very interesting thing for everyone involved.
Yeah. Great. I think we really have to do a good job in selling the opportunity with the learning system and also the outcomes, and being able to link those two, just as Christine has mentioned, and of course, not losing sight of also the system fatigue. People want some fresh air sometimes. So it's a bit of a balance there, getting the best out of the system and also ensuring that you get, the best out of that as well. So I see we are almost coming to the top of the hour. I'm really curious to hear from our audience what their experience has been in any of these areas we've been discussing around learning, employee self-service portals, remote work solutions, AI automation, and data-driven decision-making. I'll just give a second if there's anyone on the call who wants to unmute and say something. Okay, great. Looks like we have been taking a lot of notes. We've been taking a lot of notes at this time. I have a very, very final question, and this is really around the SMEs, and the question is how do we as SMEs, and especially those in the house who are also sort of into this space, adopt some of this HR technology, given that they are so resource intensive? How do you get to a point? And this is really just for you, Oscar, as the salesman. How would you support these guys, to really just also adopt these technologies as much as they don't have what the budget Christine has, and sell the same benefits to them? What would you look at?
First of all, software has changed. Gone are the days whereby software was a huge capital investment. Then you are in a very tight contract that every single year you're paying still a huge amount. We've all moved to subscription. So even if you look at any other business, Netflix, Showmax, everything is subscription nowadays. So that gives you the ability for even small scale businesses to actually adapt some of these technologies. Because at the end of the day, subscription is based on the number of employees that you have and the modules that you take. If you look at Christine at the bank, she'll probably take all modules end to end. But for a small scale business, probably the biggest pain point at that particular time would just be payroll and just leave. And then 10, 20 employees. That significantly makes the cost affordable to them. So the answer to that is basically the mode of pricing that has come and that has changed to ensure that software now has packages like Lite, Core, Advantage, Premium, and all those things. So there's something for everyone. So just to put it out there is that no business should run without technology. There's technology for everyone and it's affordable.
Great. Let me just read one last chat. Very well put. From Dominic, he says, in my current organization, I'm struggling with employees who are baby boomers in accepting our shift to the employee self-service HR system portal. Even after training, they still need our assistance in some services like applying for leave. Gen Z are appreciating the system against other earlier generation who are still hesitant. The moment have been forced to accommodate both. So I guess that is from Dominic's experience, probably is shared across the room by many others, with multi-generations in the workplace. There are all these dynamics, they are the early adopters and of course the ones who will always, be lagging behind. So I think very well noted there, Dominic. Keep doing what you do. I think times have changed, and I think some of the baby boomers are actually currently really catching up really fast. You'd be so surprised. So it may not be all of them. So I think, and there's this the aspect of reverse mentoring. So some of the Gen Zs actually could do a much better job in mentoring the older workforce. So very, very well put. Thank you so much, team, for being with us. Before we close, I would just love to give a minute or so for each of the panelists to just, give us their parting shots. And as I said, this is just the first of the very series of webinars we'll be running on HR transformation. So, and you guys are fortunate to be our very first panelists. So we really thank you and we really appreciate you. So maybe just a minute, Oscar, and then maybe Christine.
Okay, nothing much. Just want to add by saying no business should be running without technology. Technology is now affordable. Every business needs technology to make HR strategic decisions. At the end of the day, you need to get the demographics in terms of how your employees are structured. You need to make decisions. You need to be compliant as well. At the end of the day, You have a fiduciary duty to also pay taxes as well. So you need to calculate pay very well, NHIF, NSSF, and all those things. So technology is very available nowadays. It's affordable. Business should actually adopt it, and HR people should now remove all those mundane clerical work they were doing, push it to technology, employee welfare, and other strategic decisions. Thank you.
Great, thanks. And Christine, as you come in, maybe you can just take that last question that has come. Someone says that just as an offside though, what are some of these robust HRIS that can accommodate all these HR functions?
Oh, okay. All right. Wow. I think it's more of Oscar's question, but I can give them a few. So,
Okay.
I have worked with systems like Workday. I think there's this one called PeopleSoft. There's quite a lot in the macro of HR information systems, and I think you can do your research. There's a lot of nowadays organizations locally who can you can pay on subscription, like Oscar was saying. I used to be in consulting where a lot of SMEs could not buy their own systems and were just on a subscription model. Even if you just take payroll or time and attendance, there are quite a number of systems out just in Kenya here that you can get at a reasonable cost. So I'll just leave it at that. But my parting shot is human resource practitioners. One of the things that I urge all of us to do is to get ahead of all the technologies that are taking place around us. Let's not be ignorant of what they are and what they do, because I think there's a lot of fear nowadays in organizations from employees about technology, and usually people fear what they don't know, you know. So they just hear this animal called AI, and they are now so fearful that AI is going to take away jobs, which is not the real truth. There are 8 technologies that will massively disrupt the world. Artificial intelligence is one of them, but it's not the only one. So how can you school yourself as a HR person to be ahead of the curve around the technologies that are really disrupting the world, whether it's AI, virtual realities, augmented realities, things like blockchain. There's a lot more than just AI, and people are just stuck there. So I urge us all to be ahead of the curve, because we are the ones who lead the rest of the organization in learning and being in front of the curve around change when it comes.